So Bill Richardson is at the New York City DEP. We've been hearing about New York City's water system a lot all day, and now we get to hear from the horse's mouth, as they say. Bill's job involves overseeing relationships with the wholesale water customers for the New York City DEP. He's got a background in environmental science, and he's working on water conservation in communities up here. So I thought it was very important, please come up, to have some updates and information about how New York City is promoting water conservation in communities in our region.
Thank you, Simon. Clicker. Is it this one?
Oh, yeah, that's it.
All right. Now it's laser. We got to have a laser pointer. So yes, I'm another scientist in a world of engineers in the water supply industry. Thank you for having me today. And the word of the day is go fast, to get it back on schedule. So I do want to acknowledge the two partners I'm working on this project with, Carolina Griggs, who is no longer with New York City DEP, but she was with us in our Sustainability Bureau just up until earlier this month. And Mayor is a consultant with the firm Water DM out of Boulder, Colorado, and he's our primary consultant in the development of these plans. So what we're doing as a New York City water supply with our wholesale customers is we're providing a partnership and an assistance program to offer consultant-based resources for our wholesale customers. We started out with our top 10 because they make up really over 80% of the wholesale consumption for New York City supply, and we'll learn about that a little bit. And so outreach and assistance to those top 10 will be the most cost-effective for us and also have the most effect on reducing consumptions for our wholesale partners. So a bit about the New York City water supply system. You've probably all seen this plot and these bullets many times before. We are a surface water system, about 1.1 billion gallons a day. The one point I'll note is that 580 billion gallons of storage capacity is a tremendous amount relative to our demand, and that in a summer like this has been very beneficial for the city's supply, but a summer like this has really demonstrated the vulnerability of some of the more regional and local supplies to short-term climate shifts and to moderate drought conditions. So particularly in the area of Newburgh, New Windsor, they're in some drought conditions. They have very low reservoir levels. The village of Cold Spring, similar situation. So at the bottom, we wanted to talk a little bit about New York City's supply preparing essential repairs to our aqueduct systems, and that's a driver to this program. In addition, one of the major drivers is just long-term resiliency of the system. It's a term we've heard earlier today. So this program marks the first time in nearly 200 years of water supply development and expansion for the city that we're actually looking at demand management programs, not only internally but also with our wholesale partners, to not have to expand further. So the wholesale customer basis, we're kind of focused very much on Hudson River towns, very much on the Hudson River watershed. Our partners span from the city of Yonkers all the way to High Falls, the small water district in the towns of Rosendale and Marbletown. There's about 40 different customers, and it serves about 1 million people. Nearly 100 million gallons a day is our wholesale customer base. So it's a significant quantity of water, and it's a significant population served. So on to water demand management planning. So the real goal of this system and this program is to reduce consumption for our wholesale customers 5%. We chose the 5% goal because that's the goal that we've set in city for our own target, and we thought that that was a great initial benchmark to reach out and to bring about for our wholesale partners. It was actually peer-reviewed comments on our New York City water demand management plan were received, and one of the items from that was, what about the wholesale sector? So here I am today with the program. In a word, water demand management is all about efficiency. So efficiency of supply. Traditional measures for water conservation program have focused on behavioral actions, turn off the tap when you're brushing your teeth, replace fixtures with low-flow fixtures. Water demand management brings in some terms and looks at really the demand side of that equation. So how much water is the water supply producing? Where is that water going? Is it being lost in the distribution system? And so really loss control has been the biggest factor that we found in our initial work in this study, and we're continuing to promote programs to combat that loss and make for better efficient use of the water. But why? New York City, New York State, it's a wet region. Why do we have to focus on water demand? We do have a history. It's good for the environment, and our demand trends are different. So we really want to focus on that differing demand trend and offer a program that can hopefully bring those demand trends more into line. The last bullet, water shortages periods happen. They'll happen for a variety of reasons. Sometimes there are drought periods. Sometimes there are infrastructure upgrades which require our wholesale partners to use backup supplies. So this plot is a wonderful 1970 graphic. I was born in 1970. And it shows the water demand, not only the pattern to date for New York City consumption, but it also shows projections. And the fundamental area of importance for this plot is really the growth of the demand beyond the 1970 area. If we really had projected growth and we really stayed on target with what those projections say, we would have been outstripping the supply and the sustainable yield of our reservoir system. The projection was for our wholesale sector to be at 325 million gallons a day by 2020 in this plot, and really right now we're only at 100 million gallons, so it's a big difference. Flash forward to today, this is what the consumption pattern actually looks like. So from 1960 to today, we've had a little bit of an uptick, but then we've had dramatic increases, really starting with the 1990 timeframe. So in 1990, New York City was at the end of the 1980s period where there was a number of water shortage situations. So it was important to develop some conservation programs. It was also important from a wastewater perspective. As many of you know, New York City has a combined system. CSO overflows were a big deal then, and bringing the system flows for wastewater in line and having to reduce the capital requirements for building additional wastewater treatment was also just as much, I would say, a rationale for water conservation and demand management programs as was just conserving from a supply availability perspective. So it takes us to a refined why. Not only do we want to sustain for the long term, but we want to sustain for meeting real critical goals in our operational future. We want to benefit both water and wastewater. We want to reduce supply and treatment costs. And then we also want to manage that finite resource with a growing population. Step back one second, but on our population, you can see the demand trend has had drastic variation, but that population line, the green line, has stayed somewhat constant and is ever increasing, even if it is a slow increase at that. Some specific reasons why we would want to implement water demand management. We have several programs for water infrastructure development. So namely, we have our Catskill Aqueduct Repair and Rehabilitation Program that will see shutdowns in 2017, 2018, and 2019. We need our wholesale partners to be prepared for that. We have a Delaware Aqueduct leakage situation, and we have to repair that. So that will be a 6 to 8 month shutdown of that critical resource. Almost half the supply of water to New York City will be unavailable for that 6 to 8 month period during that shutdown. We have our New Croton Aqueduct, which is only recently, as of 2013, back online after a 9-year hiatus and a 9-year rehabilitation of that aqueduct system. Then we have the weather and the climate factors that impact things. We heard about Superstorm Sandy, we heard about Hurricane Irene, and Lee. And then we have certainly drought periods, which are the more meaningful time for the water demand management. Some projections that New York City has for our future growth. Thankfully, they're nothing like the 1970s projections, which were near exponential growth. Currently, they're in between flat to only about a 20% increase between now and 2040. So we really the red line to probably be the more true of these projections at this point. So that's where our bet is at, and that's with additional increased efficiencies for coming from our water demand management programs. For Upstate and for our wholesale partners, we have a little bit larger increase projected. We're expecting to increase to about 140 million gallons a day from the projections as they came out of the model were about 10 million gallons a day high. They were at 120 million gallons per day versus the 110 that we actually see. So the increase from 120 to 140 is a little bit higher of an increase. So it's additional incentive and rationale for why we wanted to provide this partnership program. One of the key features that makes demand management a very attractive option is the compatibility of costs of implementing a demand reduction program versus water supply expansion costs. So you can see here the two bar charts. They represent a comparison of water demand management measures on the left side and to the water supply development costs on the right side. So you can see that they're very similar, but really in the end, the dividend that's paid out is that water demand management was a lower cost for the city to embark upon rather than to look at groundwater exploration, look at New Jersey connections, look at Nassau County potential interconnections for meeting short-term needs. So to embark upon and implement this program in the city, we have 5 key strategies that we're looking at. We're looking at, as I mentioned, a 5% reduction over the next 5 years. So the first is our municipal water efficiency program that involves traditional retrofits on New York City buildings, New York City Housing Authority buildings. The Housing Authority itself has 1 million people that live in New York City Housing Authority buildings, so you can really attract and you can really develop a lot of reduction from targeted programs at the municipal level. From our perspective on a rate basis, it's also revenue neutral programs. Many of those customers receive their water at either a flat rate or a modified rate from traditional volumetric water consumption. We have a residential initiative, mostly for multifamily housing at this point, and that's a residential toilet replacement program. That program, really promised to deliver great savings, but I think what we found in our research is that the amount of replacements in the 90s is somewhat probably dewatered the effect of this program moving forward. That has not been the really application and the response that we had hoped for going forward with that. Collaborations with private sector organizations, very important part of the program. I think that is great for the grassroots initiatives and it's great for buy-in and outreach. We have a New York City Hotel Challenge where we've challenged different hotels to go into water savings programs and envision work on programs, and so we've done that well. We also are starting a restaurant challenge. We have water supply optimization. That's some of the traditional demand management principles of loss control. And then last but not least, we're going to review and revise water supply and water shortage regulations. So on to the customer engagement. What did we do to embrace our customers and outreach? And it was traditional, old-fashioned phone calls, have a program. We'd like to provide you with assistance. I'm from the government. I'm here to help. And, fortunately, we work with other governments and water utilities, and so they believed us. And that was good because we brought in Peter Mayer, and we started to looking at that goal of our 5% reduction. We set a baseline budget of about $3 per gallon per year saved. And then we identified customers. We looked at our largest users. We tracked per capita consumption on a monthly basis, and so we can target users even if they're not one of our largest users. Maybe they're a customer or a community that uses a lot of water relative to their neighboring communities. And then lastly, we wanted to develop agreements. We have 2 agreements in place to get into this program, the first of which is where we're at right now. We have water board customer agreements, and that allows our municipal partners to engage in the use of the consultant resources. And then we have intermunicipal agreements planned for phase 2 of the program, and getting involved with phase 2 of the program does allow for New York City to actually fund some of the implementation measures that we've identified. So what's in a water demand management plan? So we have our base template. It includes an introduction and just general overview of what the program will offer. We have an acceptance letter. We think this is very important because we want our programs and our plans to be endorsed by municipal officials. And that helps with the buy-in and bring that program to the people and the residents of a community. We do a water supply profile and characterization. It includes an AWWA. We've heard a bit about them before today. There's what we call the M36 water audit process. It's a spreadsheet tool. It's freely available, and that tool is very useful in providing a mass balance of water use for a water utility. We set a water conservation goal. If a community wants to go beyond the 5% we originally targeted, they're certainly welcome to do that. We then do an evaluation and proposal of the different conservation measures. This is a cost-benefit analysis, and we're really looking to keep and implement the lowest cost options first, because why would you spend more money than you have to on a program like that? You may be able to get really great, efficient measures at a lower cost, and so that makes sense to do those things first in developing these programs. Finally, we have an implementation plan which puts together a schedule and a budget and then develops that and incorporates that really into the phase 2 agreement for our program. So the process is very data driven. What we have in the water system profile, we go through a lot of detailed bullets. Our water demand analysis goes through and develops different production standards. We go and look at losses. We look at different uses by different customer classes. We then do that water loss audit and really stepwise through. It's a multi-page Excel document, but it produces a lot of meaningful metrics that a water utility and water system can use then to track themselves year on year. Lastly, then we do an assessment of the ongoing water demand management programs that they have, and we put together our proposal for demand management. Some of our preliminary findings, I guess I'll just jump right to the chase, and we notice water loss as a dramatic piece. So real losses is, as it says, water lost to a distribution system after it's produced by a treatment plant and before it gets to a customer meter. So the numbers are pretty staggering. So in million gallons per year, it's anywhere from 500 to 100 million gallons a year for some of these medium-sized communities. They're all large systems, but their populations range from about 20 to 70,000 people. In terms of amounts, we're talking anywhere from $200,000 to $1 million a year in water that they purchase to supply to their customers, and they get no return on. So all that really is enough incentive to have water utility partners look a little closer at their system. Here's an example of what we produce in the demand management plan itself. We'll do a nice pie chart of water that's treated, produced, and then delivered to metered connections. And then in the yellow side is what we call the non-revenue water, or the water loss component. And then we'll do the benefit table for developing different recommendations and options. So you'll notice here some of the costs vary in this note from about $5 to $6 per gallon served to up to $15. So moving forward, some of our top recommendations, we'd like to recommend water loss control first and foremost to all of our customer partners. We'd like to get involved with some customer engagement. There's been very effective programs in the utility sector for electric utilities on engaging customers and reducing values. And then residential retrofits for our wholesale customers and some of the older cities, medium-sized cities that are in Westchester County. It's probably going to be a very cost-effective program as well. So some of our partners that we have the town of New Windsor, which is fairly local to here, the village of Scarsdale, Westchester Joint Waterworks, which is lower Westchester County, the city of Mount Vernon, the town of Greenberg, United Water, and the village of Ossining. And I can stop right there and jump to any questions if you have, or if you want to keep on rolling. Okay. There you go. Thank you very much.